Hey everybody, and welcome back to Mountain High, an exploration into the opioid crisis in West Virginia. I'm Rachel, and together we will be diving deeper into why this is happening, the challenges the crisis presents, and what we can all do to help solve these problems. Joining me throughout the series will be Frankie Tack, West Virginia University Clinical Assistant Professor of Counseling, the Mayor and Chief of Police of Hurricane, West Virginia, Scott Edwards and Mike Mullins, Beaver, Executive Director at Ray of Hope in Charleston, West Virginia, Theresa, a family nurse practitioner and professor of nursing at West Virginia Wesleyan College, and a unique perspective from a person in recovery, Heather. Let's get started. On today's episode, we will be talking about what opioids are and how they affect people. For some perspective on this, let's hear from Professor Frankie Tack.
Sure. It's a great question because we're throwing around this opioid epidemic and opioids and opiates a lot, and it has surprised me sometimes that people really don't know what they are. In short, these are our pain pills. But opioid refers to a substance that binds in our brain to what are called the opioid receptors. So this is a part of our brain that's actually the built-in pain relief system. And so, we're actually wired for opioids, which is why they have the effect on us they do as far as, pain medications. So that you've probably heard of endorphins. You go for a run or get a good workout and you have this nice euphoric, mildly euphoric feeling. That's your what we call endogenous or built-in opioids, which an endorphin is, hitting those opioid receptors. So opioid, those are the drugs that sort of take advantage of those receptor systems in our brain that are built into our body. And shall I tell you a little bit about the difference between opioids and opiates? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, because I think there's sometimes a little confusion there. But so opioid is kind of the broad umbrella term, and that includes both opiates, which are sort of those are the more natural products. We actually call them the naturally occurring. Those are the ones that are derived directly from the opium poppy. So the poppy flower, maybe you have some in your garden, but this is a particular variety of poppy flower. And so the flower blooms, and then when all the petals fall off, there's that little knob that's left. If you're into roses, you might see that knob. Those are called rose hips. So it's that little knob that's left, and it's scraped, and then some liquid oozes out and dries and crystallizes and is scraped off. And that becomes the basis for opium and some other naturally derived substances like morphine, codeine, and then our big daddy heroin.
So now that we've explored more about opioids, let's take a closer look at the people affected by these drugs. Many people believe that addiction of all kinds, but especially to opioids, happens completely by choice. This couldn't be further from the truth. Addiction is a disease, not a choice. More on this with family nurse practitioner Theresa.
The parallel that I try to make is there are a lot of diseases that we are actually responsible for. I mean, obesity causes hypertension and diabetes, and, smoking causes lung cancer or cancer in almost any place in the body. But I still treat smokers. I still prescribe their oxygen. I still give diabetics insulin, even if they've fallen off their diet. I mean, I still take care of patients, even though they are somewhat responsible for other diseases they may have. And I think it's no different with someone who's afflicted with addiction or substance use disorder. I'm still going to treat you no matter where you are in that path.
So, opioids and opiates are different forms of the same drug that impact and change receptors in the brain to create an addiction to a substance. This addiction is a disease, not a choice. To learn more about how this disease impacts people, I've asked Heather to share her experience with us.
And I used for probably about 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And the really hard point in my life came when I got addicted to opiates. I mean, I was an alcoholic and I used other substances, but when I got on opiates in about, I would say 2003, the first couple of years weren't that bad, and then I say I had like a 7-year nightmare on it, and I finally got clean in 2014.
Wow.
So that's what really sped up. You know, I probably, if I had not gotten addicted to opiates, I think I would still be drinking right now.
Living that same lifestyle, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it just led to the end quicker.
Yeah, I think that kind of happens for a lot of people. I mean, you know, the big focus right now in West Virginia is like opiates, but, you know, people don't necessarily just say like, oh, I'm going to take this today and like out of the blue.
Right.
You know?
Well, I already was an addict.
Yeah.
And an alcoholic for sure. And had been to treatment 3 times for other, you know.
Like even before then?
Even before I got on
wow.
opiates, yeah. And so that was the one that really took a hold of me though, because I'd never had anything make me physically sick like that if I didn't have it. So it kind of was like a whole new element to my addiction.
Yeah.
And it started, I got my gallbladder out and I got my first shot of Demerol. And it's like, I mean, that changed my life. So that's what I wanted. And it took a while, but it really took a hold.
Well, Charleston and Huntington have been affected way more than Hurricane. But what we've seen here in Hurricane and Putnam County, we've seen many people affected by it. It's really hit us in multiple ways. Families here, they're local people that live here, they've gotten hooked on opioids. And there's been people here that have died right here in Hurricane that we've known, that me and the chief have both known. Good people, good families, they've got hooked on it and died. So that's bad. Right. You know, that it's attacked what I would call a normal family that has a support system, that's grown up the right way, that has good parents, and you know, socioeconomically they were fine, but they somehow don't know how, but they got hooked and they're either hooked on it now or they've died.
I started seeing a pattern after 8 or 10 years of, I'm on this domestic, this guy's an alcoholic, he's smacking around on his wife and kids, and then I go back and they got a little 6-8-year-old kid that wants to poke at my handcuffs and pull on my pants and talk to me. So go down the road a little ways, that same 17-18-year-old kid is smacking his girlfriend, and he's drunk. And so what he's talking about with the opioids, I mean, these affects the greatest parents in the world and grandparents ever. You would never expect it. Now, I would expect it if I was at your house and your mom was an alcoholic and she done all this stuff to you and was mean. No, I wouldn't expect it, but it wouldn't surprise me a bit that you fell into that rut and you done the same thing. And I told him, I was like, you see that boy right there? I'm going to deal with him in 10 years just the way I'm dealing with you. You're going to be the cause of me meeting him.
The pattern just repeats over and over.
But now with the drugs, like he's talking, there's no pattern. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just,
and
you try it one time and you chase that high, they chase it, and they never get that high again.
So, Heather knows how and when it hit her. The problem is, when we pull back and look at this across the population, it's not that simple. Like the mayor and chief said, it's random. And for policymakers, this is where the tragedy begins. Unlike other public health crises that can be followed and tracked, we haven't found a clear pattern here. When we look at the theories of addiction, we can see that there are many factors that can affect a person's chances of becoming an addict. Just about anything from socioeconomic factors like education, employment, and income to family life and genetics can affect a person's chances of becoming an addict. In this episode, we've really looked deeper at what opioids are and how they affect people. Next episode, we'll hear more about providers like counselors and medical professionals to get their perspective on how this epidemic has affected them. Thank you to Frankie Tack, Theresa Poling, Scott Edwards, Mike Mullins, Marie Beaver, and Heather Darr. I'm Rachel. Thanks for listening to Mountain High. See you next time.